The train arriving at platform 7 is the most powerful ever to run in Britain, the new pride of British Rail. It's electric, it's been built at a cost of £3 million, and it's designed to travel at speeds of up to 140 miles an hour. British Rail have 31 of the new trains on order as part of their £400 million electrification programme on the East Coast route. 10 new trains will be in service by next May. British Rail say they'll rate among the world's great high-speed trains.
Hello and welcome to Dean Park. It's been a pretty busy month, so we've got a packed update for you today, which includes more progress on the Great Wall with a new tunnel portal. I'll continue my Mark 1 coach project as Richard and I improve the weathering effects on my ScotRail coaches. I do my very best to bankrupt myself in a single calendar month with 4 new Hornby Class 91s joining the fleet. I'll also be covering a special offer in association with West Hill Wagon Works to get an exclusive Dean Park discount off these 3D printed peak cabs. I'll go over the benefits and the installation of these DCC Concepts Power Bus spike suppressors. I'll also give a brief overview of another long awaited item, which is this Class 800 LNER Celebrating Scotland Azuma. Okay, I've now got the tunnel portal fitted to the Great Wall of Dean Park. This is a scale model scenery product. It's been kind of designed by me and then taken forward by Justin, obviously to match in with the scale model scenery walls that he does. The link to these walls, by the way, is in the description below. This tunnel portal, I believe, or some version of it, will be going on sale at some point on the scale model scenery website. Looking a bit closer in, we've got the 2 side walls at both sides of the tunnel. This wall here and that wall there, they are not part of the portal kit. I just used plain parts of the brick section wall to obviously fill the width that I required. The insides of the tunnel as well are scratch built by me, but everything else in between is what you actually get in the portal kit. Obviously you've got your 2 buttress walls there, your concrete plinth, your beautifully designed stone surround with inners as well, that all the stone even matches up. We took a bit of to and fro to get that right, but it looks superb now. So yeah, it's a really good kit. I'll take it off the layout now and I'll let you have a good look at how I've actually constructed this. Right, there's it off the layout. We can now see all the different parts. Obviously you've got your 2 smaller side walls there that fit perfectly into the width that I require, and they join perfectly with a kind of tongue and groove, if you like, design, which is hidden behind these buttress walls. So the scale model scenery kit for the retaining walls is superbly designed. It really is well thought out. Turning it around, you'll see the rear wall's got all the parapet detail, infills and the buttress walls, so it's a nice touch. It's not just detailed on the front. Here we've got some laser cut basically arch supports that I've sandwiched together, and they support the plasticard actual archway, and the plasticard is from Southeastern Finecast. Got a bit of supply here just to make it nice and square so everything sits as it should, and that is pretty robust, to be honest. It's not going anywhere. Looking at the inside, you'll see the brick there with all the streaking and weathering. You might not pick it up too well because it's right under a light just now, or it's quite in deep shade. That's just engineer's blue brick from the Precision range. What I've got here is a nice little touch with the stone arch on the inside matching the actual stones on the face of the tunnel portal. Justin and I had a bit of to and fro with the sizes of that just so it fits perfectly, and that you've not got an exposed edge of the actual inside stone appearing at the front. It's all nicely tied in at a 90-degree angle there at the corner of the arch. You'll see these sandwiched pieces glued together here on both sides. They're basically part curves and they support the wall up to around about here. So obviously this arch brickwork cannot go anywhere. It's nice and square and straight through the length of the tunnel. This might afford you a better view of the sandwich parts down the side there. You also notice a very thin piece of 0.5 plasticard there and round the archways and at the other side. That's just to ensure that everything was perfectly square when the actual archway went into position. So there you go, the tunnel portal. I really am quite pleased with the way that's turned out, even down to the small details like cutting the actual concrete ledging in there to fit round the wall at the corner where it's going to be in position on the layout. It takes a bit of planning, takes a bit of time to construct all of this and weather it up. It's still got a wee bit more weathering to do, some soot staining, maybe some airbrushing on the front there, around the archways and in the front of the brickwork, and a little bit more of maybe some lime streaking as well from the mortar of the brick course. Once I've scenically completed this section, I'll move up to the upper area where I'll work on this embankment that will go all the way around. This area here will be the Nairn linoleum factory site, and obviously this will tie in nicely with the other factories that I've got across the rails from that. This area here at the edge here will all be boxed in with some ply, so it'll be nice seamless from the edge of the tunnel portal there all the way along the edge of the baseboard. I recently held a poll on my Dean Park Close Facebook group asking what train you would like to see enter and leave the tunnel first for the official opening, and the winner of that particular poll was an HST, so I'm now going to film some action of trains going in and out the tunnel led by the iconic high-speed train. I'm not going to go into any great depth with the latest 91s from Hornby, as I've already done a fuller review in another video. The link to that will appear at the top of the screen. You might find this useful if you're considering purchasing the Hornby Class 91 model. I've now got all four from the first release of these Class 91s from Margate, with each being attractive and interesting in its own way. I'll start with the LNER model and I'll work backwards in time. First off, the livery is really striking. The red is brighter than previously used on Hornby LNER stock, however I actually think it's more accurate than before. It's less of a deep red and it's got more of a fiery tone to it. The finish of this model is first class and there's no real issues to talk of. 91118, the Fusiliers, wasn't even on my pre-order list. However, when Stephen from Scooney Hobbies sent me a sneaky wee video of it running on his test track in the shop, I was sold on it. I've got a real soft spot for this livery, so out came the wallet. Moving on to the GNAR model, in my opinion, it's one of the all-time classic privatisation liveries. I mean, just look at it. It just looks so classy with its rich blue colour and orangey red stripe. It's numbered 91117 and named Cancer Research UK. The minimalistic appearance of the GNAR stock wasn't something I initially liked. After all, it was replacing my beloved Swallow livery with something bland and boring. However, it did suit the 91s, Mark IVs and HST sets. A revised version of this livery saw orange doors applied to all the coaching stock, which I think detracted from the sleek appearance of this livery. The gold lettering was also a slightly later addition, with earlier GNAR vehicles being outshopped with white letters, but in my opinion the gold gives a far superior appearance. I also like the way the yellow panel sits with the rest of the livery. I don't even model this era, but I couldn't resist the livery, and who knows, one day I might even add a GNAR HST to my collection. After all, it would be rude not to. That takes me on to the Intercity Swallow livery. First impressions are favourable. I mean, just look at it, it's beautiful. In my opinion, this livery is the best livery worn by this class of loco. It looks fast even when stationary, with the sleek swept back angles in the paintwork, and Hornby have even got the correct shades of Falcon and Executive Greys. So have they finally mastered the art of the correct Intercity colours? Let's hope so. Looking in a bit closer at this particular Hornby model though, things can start to irritate you. First, many of the models came out of the factory with flaws, either on the paint finish or assembly. The retailer where I got this had reported that each one of the stock that he had some form of blemish, scuff or rippling of the Falcon Grey finish on it. You'll see from some of the photos on the screen the kind of rippling that I mean. After looking through a few, I managed to get a good example. The ripples on the surface are a sign of poor paint processing at the factory, while most of the scuffs appear to be as a result of the plastic packaging, which is a bit flexible and it moves and twists. This will allow some contact with the model in the wrong places, leaving marks on the paint. There are some issues with the front piece under the cab window. It's a separately fitted part and has been painted while part of the injection moulded sprue. They've snipped it off, and on some examples it leaves a noticeable mark. Other examples have seen this touched up by hand with poor results, and some have even had damage repaired, which you can see from the photo on the screen now. Then other little touches catch your eye. The inside of the side window framing should be painted black, but it's been left white on the model. And then you look at the cab and you see the forward facing camera, something that wasn't even present on the Intercity Swallow ones. As with all the 91s so far, there's a slight element of wobble as it moves along. It's not the best running loco out there, which it really should be as it's brand new. There are so many positives with this model though. The livery is stunning. The shades of the livery are a big improvement on previous Intercity Swallow stock. You know, the buffer beam detail with the sprung buffers that can be retracted, that's a really nice touch. And Hornby are now supplying etched nameplates, which is a big plus for me. I don't tend to fit them, but I know a lot of modelers out there really look for that little bit of added detail. And who knows, I might even start fitting the etched plates to these Class 91s. So with all things considered, am I happy with the model? Well, yes I am. I've basically waited 10 years for this model to be on the layout, and I really am glad that I've finally got it here. It is a good overall model. I wouldn't have bought 4 of them if I didn't think that. Comparable AC electrics out there are the Bachmann Class 90, which for the same kind of money has a far superior motorised pantograph, and the mechanism allows the model just to ride a little bit better, if I'm being honest. The Hellion 86 is also another new model, with an impressive level of detail, a better quality pantograph than the Class 91, and a better cab interior detail. Now, that's unusual for me to say that, because Hornby used to pride themselves on getting, you know, the detail of the cab spot on. I mean, you just have to look at the HST in the Class 60s to know what I mean. I'm not having a swipe at Hornby here, as I do rate this product, and as I said earlier, I wouldn't have shelled out and bought 4 of them if I didn't think they were any good. It's just when you look back at the kind of detail and level of finish that they were achieving on their diesel and electric stuff, say 10 to 15 years ago, that they seem to be less consistent in this area now. And it's not just Hornby where I've seen these inconsistencies in fit and finish creep in on their new models, which goes to show that no brand is immune from faults and flaws. 00 gauge perfection. It's impossible, is it not? You may have seen from my March update that I put some interior lighting into these Mark I ScotRail liveried coaches from Bachmann. These coaches come in a factory weathered finish, and they are a bit generic in their appearance. So what I'm going to do in this video, with the aid of Richard's experience, is we're going to take back some of the factory weathering and add some more bespoke details to the coaches. There's 4 coaches in total. We've got 2 standard corridor coaches, and we've got 2 corridor brake coaches like the one in front of you now. This coach is yet to be worked on. In the next clip I'll show you a before and after, so you can get some impression as to where we're going with this. Hopefully you can see from the two coaches on the screen, the one at the left has not been worked on yet, and it's got the kind of fairly generic brown colour along the bottom of the coach onto the sole bar, whereas the one on the right has had the weathering toned back a little bit and a more realistic kind of streaking effect to that. It's also had the roof subtly streaked and blended down. The roof on the left is more of a browny finish, whereas the roof on the right has been given a pass with some roof dirt. In addition, we're going to add some Tamiya panel line and wash. As you can see, the one on the right there in the actual door recesses, it really does bring the detail to life and make the moulding start to pop, whereas the one on the left is a bit more bland and two-dimensional. Okay, Richard, you've got one of the standard corridor coaches here. Talk me through the materials you're going to use and the methods you're going to kind of employ to do this, and then obviously you'll show me through one of them and then I'll get stuck in on the next one.
Yeah, so basically you can see it's a little bit generic, bit airbrushed, bit browny because it's a manufactured finish. Perhaps the worst offender is the gangway doors, which is just a splodge of brown. I'd argue the brown tone's perhaps not quite right. It would have been a darker colour most certainly. Perhaps okay for the winter time, but usually we model during the summer months. Stuff like this would have gone through the carriage wash and it would have been cleaned, and you would see all the streaking and fading in the paint, and all of the dirt would be confined to the doors and the underframe and the roof. So what we're going to do is take these cotton buds or Q-tips, some isopropyl alcohol and some enamel thinners, and just agitate the airbrushed dirt and wipe the majority of it off, and that will create a sort of streaking effect. It will fade the blue that's on there, so it will make the coach look a little bit older, a little bit distressed. And then after we've done that, we can go into the doors, we can add a little bit of wash and detail, put a little bit of airbrushing on the roof for some variation, and of course tone down that nasty gangway. We're basically just going to wipe most of that off and apply a black wash in there, which look a little bit darker, perhaps a little bit more authentic than just this sort of sprayed mud finish that we've got at the moment. Okay, so we've removed most of the weathering from the side. We've got a nice sort of streaking, sort of faded, damaged paintwork appearance. It looks like the sort of cleaning chemicals that the train shed uses to keep all of this stuff clean are sort of eaten into the paint. So I'm quite happy with that effect, but what it's lacking now is a bit of definition in the doors and the panel lines around the edge of the gangways and such. So we'll take the trusty Tamiya panel line wash, in this case the black, but the dark grey also works quite well depending on what effect you're going for. And we're just going to use the panel line around the various doors. It'll be particularly noticeable on this one because it's a brake vehicle, so we've got double doors in 3 sets basically down here, and we've got a single door at the end. So we'll take some of the panel line and just very carefully apply it to the shut lines, and this is very easy to remove, so if we get some onto the paintwork in places where we don't want it, then we can just come back later with a cotton bud and remove it. So the wash has now dried, gave it a couple of hours just to let that dry. And obviously we've done our best to make sure that the wash just goes in the shut line detail, but you're always going to get a little bit over the edges. This isn't something to worry about, something to panic about, because you can just take a cotton bud again with the trusty enamel thinners and just wipe that over the body sides and just get rid of any bits of wash that have gone where they shouldn't. It's nice and easy to do. Some bits will be a bit more stubborn than others, but you just keep working away until you've got the desired effect. And you can even use it to thin out the wash slightly in the door shuts if it's perhaps a little bit too intense for your liking. But as these are some relatively elderly Mark I coaches still in BR blue, then by the sort of late 80s, mid to late 80s, they'll be looking quite tired, so we'll roll with that. So we brought the model over to the paint booth. We've cleaned all of that wash off, and as you can see I've just used a bit of masking tape to mask up the sides of the model. And what we're going to do now is a little bit of variation on the roof. I always find these Bachmann Mark Is have a very uniform satin sort of finish to the roof, And while the colour's not bad, it could just do with a bit of variation. So we'll do some roof dirt across there, and a little bit of dirt wouldn't go amiss along the sole bar. We've wiped a lot of that off, but it would be nice to put a more convincing colour along here and also catch the tops of these steps, which was something that was missed during the factory weathering process. Of course, I've masked it because we don't want to put dirt back over the body side, because we've just spent hours removing it, so it kind of make the project a bit pointless if we just went over that again. So it's just a couple more effects, and then that should have everything sorted. So the first thing I'm going to do is spray the roof, and to do that I'm using the Rail Match roof dirt. This is enamel paint, not very nice when you spray it, so as always use a spray booth, some form of extraction, or a mask if you haven't got that either. Just try and look after yourself when you're airbrushing, it's not the nicest thing to ingest. Little tip with these Rail Match tins, this has got the slightly later plastic lid. These have a horrible habit of drying up. A little bit of tin foil, baking foil over the lid, over the tin, sorry, before you put the lid on, just helps look after that tin of paint, makes it last a little bit longer. So I'm going to take the airbrush. I've mixed up 50-50 mix of paint to enamel thinners. Got a nice consistency in there. And we're just going to gently waft a few stripes of roof dirt across the roof like that. Don't work lengthways, it'll look a bit strange. If you work in that direction across the roof, it'll look like rain and water staining has caused a few weathering effects to the roof, and we just should get a little bit of variation in the overall shade of grey on that roof, and it just look a little bit nicer with the rest of the coaches that we've done all this work to. Once that's dried, we'll then go over that with a matte varnish just to seal all of that paintwork in and just protect it for future handling on Dave's layout as they get moved from one siding to another or taken off the rails and put into storage. There's a good example. While the paint is still wet, you can see the difference there. Just some striping across the roof, a little bit of subtle weathering. Once this is dried, it's a relatively close colour to the shade Bachmann have used from the factory, so it's going to be not too obvious, which is what we're going for. Something subtle, but it's just going to be a little bit better than that overall sort of generic grey colour from the factory. So I've literally just done the roof a couple of minutes ago. Now we're going to switch out the colour to Rail Match Frame Dirt, number 402. Previously we were using Roof Dirt, which is number 403. And you see they go hand in hand, good colours for weathering. And now we're going to just do a very light passing across the bottom of the coach to just tie the bogies into some of the underframe detail, battery boxes and things like that. Dave's previously weathered the bogies on these and done the wheels and such, so we haven't got to worry about any of that. But I just want to catch the sole bar and get a little bit of weathering on the tops of those steps. But we'll be conscious that we don't want to go too heavy on this because we have just spent a long time removing excess sort of brown filth, so we want to be careful, but a little bit on there will certainly help just tie things together, especially the repainted bogies. So I'm going to hold the airbrush at this sort of angle and go along like that, and that will catch the tops of those steps. And just be careful, try not to overdo things, just a light pass. So with that now completed, we're going to go to Rail Match 407, which is a matte varnish, and we're going to go over the roof of that just to protect it from handling in the future, and we'll do the same along the sole bar and those bogies and the underframe detail. I've only done a light passing, but we just want to protect that paint for future use for years to come. The roof is still a little bit wet, obviously, as is the underframe. You can see there's a slight sheen to the streaking showing through, but there's no harm in going over something in a varnish while it's still a little bit tacky. The varnish will adhere perfectly well to that. It'll take a while for it all to dry, but it does mean you can do all of the weathering in one session rather than having to you know, split it up over a couple of days. It can take quite a long time, so anything you can do to speed up the painting process, I thoroughly recommend. So I'll pass all of this with matte varnish and then just pop it in a cupboard with a door on it so it can sit and dry without worry of any dust or anything landing on it, and I'll leave it there for a couple of days. So there we have the matte varnish applied. You can see the roof has got a slight sheen to it, everything is slightly wet. That will all dry to a nice matte finish, and if you look carefully, once that's dried, you should be able to pick out some of those subtle tones in the roof with the rain washing effect. Along the sole bar I've done the same thing, just a pass of matte varnish just along the sole bar and the bogies and the underframe detail. It's getting late in the day now, so it's almost impossible to see, but it is there. Once this is dried and back on the layout, you'll be able to see the effect.
If you recall in my last update, I mentioned the DCC Concepts bus suppressors. Now what these kind of suppressors do is they improve the DCC waveform and prevent harmful voltage spikes that occur when a DCC system encounters a short circuit. Basically they prevent a spike from damaging other decoders on the layout, and that's why it's important, well to me anyway, to fit them at the end of the bus wires just to protect your, obviously your quite expensive investment with your decoders. You might have a few locos on the layout at one time. You know, for a few quid, these were under a tenner, you'd be as well putting these on your bus wire and giving that added protection, that insurance policy. The ones in front of you now are the latest versions of the DCC suppressors from DCC Concept. I've got an earlier version on my layout just now, which basically consists of two very thin wires and a small circuit board, and I just basically wire one of them into each end of the bus wire. The diagram on the screen now will show you how simple it all is to wire up into your existing layout. It takes a matter of minutes, and as I said in my last clip, it's well worth the cost. Just to compare, there is the original version from DCC Concept, and there's the new version. Do exactly the same thing, however this one's easier to mount to the baseboard thanks to the screw holes here, and easier to wire up thanks to these little connector blocks here. That's the suppressors now in position. As you can see, I've fixed them to one of the baseboard supports. They're looking nice and tidy there, nothing hanging down, getting in the way of the monitors, etc. They do generate a bit of heat when they're on, and I was always concerned about the ones that dangled down, obviously affecting the LCD displays below. However, that's no longer a problem because they're well out of the way. You may have seen from my previous video, my big trip south, that Richard of Everard Junction and I painted and weathered these 3D printed peak cabs from West Hill Wagon Works. For a period of time, you'll be able to get 15% off these 3D printed Peak cabs using the exclusive Dean Park code PEAK15. There's also additional accessories you can add to the Peak kit, which include the cab doors, engine room doors and driver's seats. So if you fancy turning your hand to some scrap locomotives, head over to the West Hill Wagon Works website. If you want to know how I achieved the appearance and look of these particular 3D printed cabs, check out the previous video, My Big Trip South, and the link to that will be at the end of this video. Just prior to me visiting Everard Junction in the Easter holidays, I acquired this brand new L&ER Azuma Class 800 in the Celebrating Scotland tartan livery. This is a 5-car pack and the code for it is R3827. Now before any of you think I've gone mad, or more mad than usual, I won't be suddenly switching my layout period and era over to modern image. I'm not going to be starting to replace all my 1980s and early 1990s stock with, Azumas and Class 68s and what have you. That might be very difficult for me to square away with you, considering at the start of the video I showed you 2 Class 91s in a current day livery, and obviously I'm now showing you this brand new L&ER Azuma. However, I just can't resist the livery on the L&ERs, whether it's the 91 or the HST or indeed this Azuma. So I've got myself a kind of collection of what I would say circa 2019 rolling stock, so the last days of the L&ER HSTs, the beginning of the L&ER Azumas, and obviously you've got the Class 91s in there as well. And I've also got a ScotRail Class 68 with some Mark IIs to run with it. So whilst I'm still staying firmly in the 1980s, early 1990s, I will allow myself a little bit of a treat to run some 2019 era stock. The main reason for me getting this particular Azuma was the Celebrating Scotland livery. Now whilst I'm no nationalist, I am a proud Scot, and the Saltire and L&ER tartan livery really stood out for me. It's not something that's going to see a lot of running on the layout, but it would be nice to take it out of the box and see it glide round the layout. It certainly is an impressive model from Hornby, and they've done a fantastic job of recreating this actual Celebrating Scotland tartan on the side. Whilst I'm not going to give a review as such on the Class 800 because I'm not an expert on this particular class, I've not really studied it enough to give you a knowledgeable bit of feedback, I'm impressed by Hornby's rendition of it. Every area kind of smacks of detail and quality. We've got nice detail on the roof, the sides are well detailed in the right shape, the nose and the cab are impressive, even the gangway ends here with the kind of flexible rubber gangway connectors are a nice touch. It really is an example of what Hornby can do when they really put their mind to it. However, being a Hornby model, it isn't without its shortcomings as well. There is an element of light bleed from the actual passenger cabin there. Obviously you've got a light grey livery, so I'm assuming they've put it on a white plastic, and it kind of shines through a little bit. The biggest culprit for the light bleed is around the cab door though, and that is quite bad. However, I've not really bothered running it in the dark. It looks cool in the daylight. You can see the cab and the interior details quite well, and it's a kind of nice tinted glazing they've put on it as well, so it's really quite realistic. One downside to this model is the plastic pantograph. Now I know we all go on about plastic pantographs on Hornby models. I could live with the Class 91 in plastic panto because it is actually easily poiseable, and it does feel a lot better than say the APT pantograph. This one however is quite difficult to get in the raised position. It's quite stiff clips, and I didn't really want to break it. And once it's up, and it's either an up or down position, and this for me is too high for my overhead masts and wires, so I have to kind of have it in the down position, which means it's kind of running in bi mode with its diesel engines, which isn't a problem for me, but it'd be nice if I could just maybe adjust the height of that a little easier, to fit in with more styles of layouts, whether you've got overhead masts and wires or not. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please post all feedback in the comments section below. And please also remember to rate this video, either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. All the feedback helps with regard to planning future videos. In the meantime, stay safe. Thanks for watching. Cheers for now.